Mr. Gates, is corporate philanthropy what you call creative capitalism, investments in overseas social programs, going to be one more victim of America's financial crisis?
I don't think so. The benefits a company can get out of having its innovators spend a little bit of their time on the needs of the poorest, I think, are a great investment in terms of hiring smart people, in terms of having a great reputation. It's clearly a long-term investment. And so as you have crises, people are going to be a little more short-term and not do a lot of long-term things. But as we get through the crisis, companies are going to be inventing new things and thinking about how they hire the best people. And so being more involved in helping the poor, I do think the trend is in that direction.
But short-term, isn't everything going to be on hold for a while?
No, I think in terms of inventing new medicines or improving software or coming up with new ways of doing things, the level of investment is going to stay very, very high. You've got some concern in the financial sector, but this country, in terms of its science and innovative businesses, it's a great thing for the world that that's there. And I don't think, even if we did have an economic cycle that was negative, a lot of that endures. A lot of that is the kind of thing that's made this country so amazing.
Is there too much doom and gloom right now?
Well, certainly there's some uncertainty. You know, the actual economy hasn't been hit that hard, but we're all worried that it will. And the more people are worried about it, then it reduces consumption and you can get an economic cycle. So the level of concern is about as high as I think it's been in my memory.
You have shifted your own personal involvement from the daily business of Microsoft to the daily business now of the Gates Foundation. What's been the biggest change for you in doing that?
Well, I'm getting to spend a lot more time learning about these foundation challenges, the diseases, getting the poorest farmers so they can have crop productivity. And there's been a crisis there. The price of fertilizer has gone up, food's gone up, and that's creating a different type of challenge in those countries. So I'm spending a lot more time learning those things, trying to get different partnerships going. This week in New York, I've announced a new partnership with World Food Program. And so it's very exciting work. It's the same type of thing in terms of getting innovators together and making long-term investments.
But if you want to help the farmers in Africa, say, don't you have to begin in this country by cutting back on an American agricultural subsidy so we level the playing field around the world, A, and B, can you be successful in doing any of that unless you get political stability in places like Zimbabwe and South Africa, which have had in the past very rich agricultural histories?
Well, South Africa actually has record agricultural productivity. They've done very well. Zimbabwe had a huge decline, and hopefully this new government compromise is going to get them back improving because they were with very good output there. The key is to have these farmers who are at the subsistence level now have enough output that they can sell crops. And that's a win-win. It's great for that farmer, and it's great for everybody who's buying food because there's more available and the price goes down. Government subsidies do distort these prices somewhat, but in fact the prices have been high enough that that's not the major factor. The major factor is the inputs are more expensive and African productivity is about 1/10 as high as the best, which includes the United States.
How hard is it now, however, to sell the American ideal, as it were, in developing countries when we're in the midst of this kind of a financial crisis in our own country? And they're saying to us, you're going to tell us how to do business, given what you've done to yourself?
Well, I think people look at the United States and say they'd love to have the problems we have. They'd love to face these challenges. They are in a much worse situation. And so, no, I don't think these short-term things change the view that there is some wisdom and science and aid that, because of our privileged position, we continue to need to provide to them, and that those partnerships, the willingness to listen and improve things, will be there in a very strong way.
You're well known for demanding very specific answers to very tough questions. You ran your business that way and built it into one of the most successful in the history of capitalism. But even your friend Warren Buffett says he doesn't know how all of this plays out.
Well, he's chosen to do his job running Berkshire, and there's no one better, and I'm sure these last few weeks have been very interesting for him. I've chosen to learn about these problems, and Warren has trusted me to take not only my wealth, but his as well, working with Melinda and the people at the foundation to learn enough to make sure we can make a big difference. And each of the projects have to have a measurable goal, and we'll be pretty tough on making sure that the money is well spent. But as you develop a business plan for the Gates Foundation, in the midst of what we're going through right now, do you worry about a cataclysmic event as coming out of all of this, that we go into a Great Depression in this country and the ripple effect around the world? Well, the effect of a depression would be, incredibly bad for all countries. The U.S. economy doing well is very, very important to the world, and so we've got to put our attention to managing our economy. They have other challenges like the price of food going up, the instability, the political leadership things, and so they've always had ups and downs. Fortunately, the general trend line, despite all of that, has been very positive. In 1990, over 20 million children died of diseases. A few years ago, we had that down below 10 million. And so it should be zero, but having cut that in half is pretty amazing. And you can see this project progress in what we call the Millennium Development Goals. But I'd be the first to say that having reasonable world economy is important to continuing to make the great progress we've made on these goals. You began Microsoft as an idea, really, and then built it into a great company, and along the way you needed capital. You were part of that kind of garage mentality that exploded with the information technology world. Apple, Yahoo, Google, all of them smart guys, but they needed money. Are the young people who are entrepreneurial out there now going to hit the wall when it comes to getting the kind of money that you were able to, and will we have a slow growth even in information technology? Yeah, in Microsoft's case, we never needed outside money. We took a 5% investment to get advice, to get people on our board, but we always were more profitable than we needed to be. We were completely self-financing. And some of the great businesses in the world have that characteristic. You don't need that much capital. Now, having said that, we need a risk-taking culture. That's been great for America. Why is the U.S. so much a leader in breakthrough software, breakthrough biotechnology? It's because we're willing to bet on entrepreneurs. And so that mechanism of risk-taking overall has been a great thing. And I don't think that's under threat. I think we'll continue to have that. And the rest of the world is learning from what we do there and following the good parts of it. You have used your wealth for the greater good of the Gates Foundation, and you've applied yourself personally to it, as well as your wife, Melinda. But now, as you know, across the country, there are a lot of people pointing to figures on Wall Street who simply walked away with big, big paydays or golden parachutes and left a lot of wreckage behind. Is that a fair characterization? Well, there's, particularly as you look at the bailout, the potential for huge windfalls, depending on how they do the pricing, is really incredible. And it's very complicated how to do this without creating things that are fairly inequitable. And it'll be interesting to watch how that gets done. There's certainly some cases where it looked like a company was doing well and somebody was able to cash out, and then later you found out it was not doing as well. And we ought to think, okay, how does the system allow that to happen? It'll never be perfect, but for these financial institutions, there will be some lessons. There are two big objections, apparently, politically, on Capitol Hill. The Republicans are saying this is the socialization of our financial markets, and the Democrats are saying you can't leave here until you do something about executive compensation. Yeah, I'm watching this and very interested in it. I think there's some merit to saying what are the criteria of when we would do this in the future. Do we bail out the car industry when it goes poorly? What are our general principles? And so we're not turning to this again and again and again. And it's developed quickly enough that it's just now that people are starting to think, what are the criteria? What's the pricing? And I think the debate is very healthy. I'm not an expert on what the exact amount should be, but I'm glad that we're taking at least a week or so here to think about something of this magnitude. But as you think about the Microsoft customer out there who is buying a new PC or buying some of your software, they're going to hold back, aren't they? There's a real psychology at work. They're terrified about where this is going to end up. Well, so far, the computer industry, including Microsoft, have had fairly good results this year. But obviously, the economic cycle affects companies like that. Most of the investments that are made for breakthrough software don't depend on whether we have ups and downs in the economic cycle. You can still hire brilliant software people and work on breakthroughs like speech recognition, knowing that things are going to be good enough that over time that's going to be a great investment.
You seem to be pretty cool about where this is going and how we're going to get there and how, if you take the long view, it'll work out in the end. Is that a fair summary?
That's right. The U.S. economy in the long run is going to do very, very well. There's some interesting, meaningful decisions to be made in these next few weeks. But the uniqueness of our universities and our science and our risk-taking, all of that is very much there. It's really just the financial sector that has developed these imbalances. And so I think we'll see our way through this and continue to be a fantastic country and have a great economy.
In the last couple of days, I've been talking to a lot of the people who are here for the UN General Assembly. They have two big concerns. One is in developing countries, whether there's going to be a continuing pipeline for the aid that they need. And B, in those countries that do have wealth, they're saying to the United States, hey, this is not just about you. You've got to internationalize in some fashion the solution to these problems.
It's certainly true that multilateral organizations like the United Nations have been at the core of how the world takes on the needs of the poorest. And these Millennium Development Goals are fantastic. They measure our progress. We have some incredible success stories that tell us what to do more of. We have some cases like some of the numbers about Africa that tell us we need to do more. We need to do better on those things. So the U.S., I do think, is going to participate more in a multilateral way. I think that's a shift that's likely to take place no matter who the new president is. These countries are facing a food price increase, and that creates a bit of a crisis for them. And so they are dependent on continued aid. And given the success stories, if we tell those right, I think people will say, oh, the very small part of the budget, of the U.S. budget that goes for aid, that is worth prioritizing.
You have described creative capitalism as the involvement in companies and the kind of work that you're doing, and you hope to raise the sights, I suppose, is the best way of describing that, of CEOs across America. How long do you think it'll be before you can get them to think about that, given what they're going through right now?
Well, I think companies should think about their innovations and how they can help the poorest. If you're a drug company, there's certain diseases that means you would put a little extra effort into. If you're a cell phone company, it means the needs of the poor, even illiterate users who want to know farm prices or get health advice, you'd think about that. It's not a huge diversion. We're talking about taking less than 5% of their innovation power and thinking about these things, which will be future markets for them. They may not pay off very quickly economically, but they will help establish within the company that company's there and committed to the greater good, directly in line with what their expertise is. So food companies and banks and technology companies, drug companies. I think that young people want to work for companies that are more involved in that type of innovation. And so the benefit to them in terms of hiring the brightest, I think, makes it a very compelling story.
You don't think that more corporations will revert to the old Milton Friedman line as the social responsibility of a corporation is to maximize the value of the shareholders, period?
I don't think for most of these big companies that's their mentality at all. They know that their reputation, their competition in the job market, these future consumers, they know that they have, in terms of the long-term optimization, think a lot more than about the profit that's just measurable in the short run. And so the reception on these things, particularly as they become concrete, the reception is very good.
Let's talk about some of the goals that you have and where you are in terms of a projection of when you may be able to achieve them. Malaria. Are we going to wipe out malaria?
Absolutely. It may take us several decades to get the kind of decrease that would allow for that. But already, with the bed nets that people are being a lot more generous to provide money for, we're seeing huge decreases.
Just keeping the mosquitoes off babies and other people.
Right. At night, you sleep under this bed net, and most of the mosquitoes are biting then. So Zambia did a number of interventions, including bed nets, just starting a few years ago, and they've seen a 40% reduction. And so these interventions that are fairly low cost, if they're delivered properly, funded properly, the payback in terms of lives saved and improving the living conditions is really phenomenal.
AIDS. There are recent statistics that demonstrate that in this country alone, we have underreported AIDS by a factor of 40%. But has AIDS gone off the radar for most people?
I don't think so. You've got over 33 million people in the world living with AIDS, and you have millions of people dying every year. And so this is a disease that people want to see advances. We have had good advances in the drugs to treat AIDS, but in terms of a vaccine to prevent it, the progress has been very slow. And so it takes a long-term approach. The Foundation is one of many entities, including part of the U.S. government, that's really made a commitment to stay the course, even though there have been some setbacks. That's going to be a tough problem to solve.
Let me get back to the financial situation one more time. You have a well-known reputation for an appetite for information, for wanting to know every decimal point wherever it is. Did you ever think you would come to a situation in the American economy where we would be living through what we are right now, with the Treasury and the Federal Reserve saying to Congress, we've got to have a $700 billion authorization. It's a 2.5-page plan, no more than that, and no one knows for sure how it's going to play out?
Well, I hope everybody's surprised by this. It was not expected. I rely on Warren Buffett, who understands these things better than I do, and he's explained that there is some fragility in the system, but to have to go to this type of bailout, I'm surprised that that's happened.
And how critical is it we get it done with dispatch?
Well, the people who are involved are suggesting it needs to be done very quickly. I'm hopeful that they really think through how the pricing gets done and what the criteria for it is. But these are the people who were picked to have this responsibility, and when they say it's important, I think we have to pay attention to that.
In the meantime, the Gates family banking deposits are in good shape?
Well, the foundation has a wide range of investments, and so this, I think nobody has the same returns this year that they've had in other years, but that's not going to change the level of spending at the foundation. We'll just keep going and know that the resources are adequate.
Finally, one of the ways that Americans keep score about wealth in the country is to read Forbes magazine. You're back on top as the wealthiest. Your friend Warren Buffett is behind you. Is that more important to you than beating him at bridge?
Well, Warren's been spending a lot of money this year. I saw he bought a new pair of shoes. I mean, he clearly, I've outdone him on frugality, it appears. So he's just going to have to tighten up.
So when I told everybody that I was be talking to you today, they all had the same question. What the heck was that Jerry Seinfeld, Bill Gates ad all about?
Well, that was kind of a teaser that was run for a couple weeks just to get people's attention. And he's a fun person to do ads with. He's brilliant, and I enjoy doing it, and it's over.
And is it over because it was working or because it wasn't working?
Oh, no, we ran it exactly the time period that was planned. It played exactly the role that it was supposed to get people looking for what's going on. Now the real campaign has started, which is this I'm a PC thing, and the people at Microsoft are thrilled at the reception it's gotten.
So is there any chance that those ads will go into syndication like the Jerry Seinfeld show?
Well, they're available for free on the Internet for anybody who wants to watch them. The ads are ad-free. You can see them at any time.
Did you know who Jerry Seinfeld was? Because you're notorious for not watching television very often.
No, I knew Jerry Seinfeld. In fact, he came out and performed at an event I had back in the early 90s, so I was thrilled when he agreed to do the ads, and it was a blast.
He let you drive one of his Porsches?
No, he didn't bring any cars when he came, but we did talk about cars. He seems to know a lot more than I do.